Welcome back to Deal Nation, where we tap into Launch Control's nationwide network of investors, coaches, and strategic partners to find out what's bringing in deals and how we can all work together to build generational wealth. We're joined today by Benson Juarez, the co-owner of Privy, a real estate software to help investors more easily find, analyze, and track available investment properties. Thanks for being on, Benson. Happy to have you here.
Great to be here, Michael. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we talked about this a little jumping in, but I want to share it with everybody else. Let's start right from the beginning. How did your real estate investment journey start, and kind of what led you up to the point of jumping into launching Privy with your co-owners?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride. I've been in the business for over 20 years. I started in about 2001. I was actually active duty military at the time after 9/11, and I was, spending a lot of time listening to podcasts. I guess they didn't call them podcasts then, but it was, training, CDs, that sort of stuff. And I came across this guy by the name of Carlton Sheets. Not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's one of the OGs in the real estate education space. And I listened to his CDs on post and really got me interested in doing real estate. And so before my tour ended, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I got involved in doing mortgage loans. And so that was kind of a side hustle I was doing on the side. I was working at the base at night and started to work with some real estate investors. Was doing hard money loans, added that to my offering. And then I'm like, boy, these guys are making way more money than me. I'm working a lot more hard. And it was important for me to figure out how to level up. So I started doing my own fix and flip, wholesale. I got licensed as a real estate agent. I'm still licensed today. And I wholesale, have a small portfolio of properties. And, I'm doing I'm part of the sub 2 community with Pace Morby. I invest here locally. I do some stuff in St. Louis, Arizona. I'm doing some private money lending as well right now. So I've got my hands on a lot of different things, and the foundation of most of it is Privy. So way back in 2010, when I met my business partner, Scott Fall, we were both in the same real estate office. We were selling REOs for this company called the Mercury Alliance. And that's where the idea of Privy was born, is that we were looking for a way of automating all of the tedious tasks that we were doing every day to find, track, and analyze properties. So we connected with the local MLS and said, we want this data so we can automate our processes. And at first they were like, yeah, get out of town. We don't do that. And then we eventually were part of initial beta phase of this thing called RETS, which is called the Real Estate Transaction Standard. It's now has evolved to some different things, but it was the first iteration of MLSs and data providers selling data to service providers so that they could get access to real estate data and information and build products around it. So that was way back in 2011. So we've been around for a while.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, let's go back a little bit. So you said back all the way back in 2001,
Mm-hmm.
and you said you were doing some wholesaling, some fix and flip, doing a bunch of different things. What did the timeline look like for that? Because I think that's a big question for a lot of people coming into real estate investment, where when they hear someone say, "Oh yeah, I'm a licensed agent and I'm doing fix and flips. I did some wholesale," and they're like, to have that level of experience, they all want that, but they're not quite sure. People coming in are often not quite sure what the ramp is for that and what they should expect if they're still working a job, for instance.
Oh yeah, it was challenging. I don't think I did my first deal until 2003.
Okay.
But I began my journey of education and got involved in, like I said, the mortgage business. So I was doing a lot of mortgages early on. And I was learning about transactions. I was learning about, I was working with real estate agents and investors and kind of just sampling all of their experience and bringing that into my world. And then, I eventually did my first deal, and that was just like a normal, I think it was a fix and flip. And then I found a business partner. We started a mortgage company, and we started actually building a business around doing deals. So we had, a department that would bring all the leads in, and then we would go out and knock on doors. And, it was a lot of foreclosures. There was a lot of
Yeah.
foreclosures at that time period. And so we had this really cool software. I can't remember what it's called now. It was like Shark Bite or some really cool software. And we would pull all the information in, and we'd go and knock on these doors. We send flyers to door hangers, got a lot of properties that way. And then we started buying liens. So in Colorado, there's a redemption process, and so we figured out a way of inserting ourselves into the redemption process by acquiring small liens on properties like HOA liens or mechanics liens. And
Hmm.
then we'd buy them at a discount, and we could get ourselves into a deal for a few $100 in some cases. And then at that point, during the redemption process, before that, there was a lot of what we would call 80/20 properties. I don't know if you remember that time period, but what
Yeah.
happened is people would get an 80% first mortgage and then a 20% second, so they could avoid paying private mortgage insurance. And so when a house like that would go into foreclosure, those second liens, those 20% mortgages, they were never in the business of owning real estate, so they would just fall off. So
Yeah.
property that maybe was at like 80% of the ARV, after that 20% loan fell off, would drop. And then us being in third position potentially, or even just going to the auction, we could acquire properties that looked like they didn't have enough room. But when that second mortgage fell off, we would slip in and get it. And so it was an amazing strategy for a long time.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys were smart about it and very diversified. So were you able to kind of weather a 2008 through 2000 whatever 10 period pretty well, given that
No,
diversification, or was it hard?
I got hit pretty hard. Yeah, I
Yeah.
lost my entire portfolio. It was, not huge, but it was over $2 million in real estate. Um,
Yeah.
and at that time, maybe the average price was 250 on a
Yeah.
on a normal home. So yeah, I got hit pretty hard. My credit obviously took a hit. Um, I think, like, from what would you say, a confidence standpoint, I lost some confidence in my ability to operate within the real estate world, and I didn't do a lot of deals for many years.
Yeah.
Once I lost my portfolio. So one of the reasons why I got back into real estate is because I always saw it as something I wanted to do. But in like 2016, 17, we're really, selling pretty hard, but I wasn't investing myself. So I felt like an imposter, right? Like I knew
Yeah.
the strategies, I was teaching them, I knew Privy in and out, and we had users that were doing deals, and I really wasn't. I still had a couple properties, but I wasn't actively out there in the trenches with everybody else doing deals. And so it was really important for me to get back.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting story because I think that because it's a common one. I've heard that from a lot of people that this really had a hard time during that period, had their confidence shaken a bit. But in almost every one of those conversations, I'm talking to someone who's extremely successful today in the real estate
Mm,
space, right? They went through it, they took a hit, but now I'm talking to someone who has multiple income streams, is making, let's just say, X amount of dollars every year, but a lot, right? So they ended up on the far end of it. They ended up very, very successful. It was just a challenging time. And why I find that interesting is because I think so many people get into real estate looking for quick money, but those that really kind of play the long game, those are the investors that I know that are just extra successful, right? Like they've
yeah.
done really well because they played the long game. It sounds like, you know, even for you, even though rough patch, I mean, you're doing quite well now. So those who stick it out, it can end up well for them in the end.
Yeah, I think that for the average, person who's listening right now, like, if you expect things to go wrong, and if you have expectations that there's going to be some ups and downs in the business, and you just have to, figure out a way to navigate those, and make sure you've got, some good reserves, cash wise, so that if revenue dips, you still have the ability to pay your bills and support yourself and put, food in the mouths of your family. So I think that's one of the things I really learned most about the 2008 and 9 is that I just wasn't prepared for it, right? I wasn't prepared for the downturn. Now I don't welcome a downturn. I don't want there to be a recession or a depression. But if there were, I knew there would be opportunities there. So whether the market goes up or down, if rates go up or down, or if there's low or high inventory, like I'll be able to figure out a way to still make money and be successful.
Yeah. Um, all right, so let's take a bit of a deeper dive into Privy. I love the software. I think it's great, and I think it is very useful for our core audience, the launch control subscribers. So just as a kind of a thought experiment, let's talk
Mhm.
about Privy, but talk about it from a few different perspectives. Like as you know, the launch control audience really runs the gamut, right? We've got people that are coming in that are absolutely brand new to real estate, and they're trying to soak up everything they can in terms of mentorship and education and software and tools. Right? And then we have those that are very, very successful, have 7 or 8 different marketing channels. They have a big tech stack, a big team that they're working with. So at kind of different entry points, or at different points on scaling up for real estate investors, how can Privy be best utilized by people at different stages of their ascension, basically?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because we have the same thing. We have people who are brand new who've never done a deal. We've got people who are doing hundreds of deals a year, and they use Privy as a way of, automating and putting systems and processes in place, and using it almost like a team of virtual assistants doing all the heavy lifting for you, and then just serving you the things that you need when you need them. But for a lot of people that are starting out, they do start off in wholesale, right? Wholesaling is a pretty common way of people testing the waters with real estate because it's low cost, it's pretty low friction. You can essentially do it for, you can get that education for free on, like YouTube University, or buy a book. I'm actually pretty a big believer in coaching and mentoring. So there's some great, coaches and mentors out there who are really good at helping people to stay accountable and giving them the tools. And the mindset probably is one of the most important things that they can help with. But with Privy, in the wholesale world, some of the main things that we help them with is market selection, which I don't think people put enough emphasis on how important where you market and where you look for deals is. We're in a comparable driven business, and comparables is what we use to derive value, right? And so you have to be very intentional about where you are looking for deals, because in the wholesale world, and in most exit strategies, we use what's called percentage of ARV to measure how good a deal is, right? ARV means after repair value. You literally cannot determine after repair value on a property that you're evaluating if you don't have comps that were flipped, right? So why would anybody look for properties in Hayes, Kansas, or Cheyenne, Wyoming? Probably most likely because they live there and it's convenient and it's comfortable, right? So they look for deals where they live. But if you live in a crappy market, you're literally creating obstacles for yourself. Like you just mentioned earlier that you're doing stuff virtually because you live in an area where there's not a lot going on. And then this is something that people think about as an afterthought, but it should be thought about first. Because if you're going to go and take this business seriously, you need to be where your comps are at. You need to be where the demand for deals are at. You need to be where the ingredients are located for you to be able to assemble a deal. We have way more control about the outcome, making money and having actually success, than we think we do. So with the what we pull into Privy is all this what we call investor activity. We track every single fix and flip. We track every single rental property nationwide, and we can use that data to figure out where the activity is. And we do it all in a visual way, which is really cool. So there's a button, you can just click it right in Privy, and plots all of the investor activity nationwide, and you can see big holes where there's no activity, like South Dakota, right? I always use Sioux Falls. Like, could you stumble into a deal in Sioux Falls, South Dakota? You probably could get one. But could you build a business around it? Could you have predictability, consistency in your business where you actually feel comfortable leaving your 9 to 5 and doing this full time? No. I don't think that you could. So if you're very intentional and you think about where you want to end up and you reverse engineer that, then it'll help you to market in those places where you know there's going to be demand. You know that if you find a quote unquote motivated seller, maybe they're using launch control and they're doing text blasting, you're going to make sure you're text blasting in very specific neighborhoods. The easiest way to find a deal is to find the unrenovated, or like the house that has deferred maintenance, it's been neglected. If you can find that house that's down the street from the house that was fixed and flipped and sold yesterday, then you got yourself a deal. The renovated houses are the houses that turn unrenovated homes into deals. If there's no fix and flips, an unrenovated house that's next door in a neighborhood where everything else is unrenovated, it's not a deal unless you get it for a super low ball price, low ball offer, one of those offers that offends people, right? And gets people to get cussed out and chased off their property. You don't have to do that if you're in a high investor activity area. And so what we've found is it's completely changed the percentage of people who can succeed when they're targeting the proper markets that have all the viability to be able to be successful.
Given that someone, if they're not going to be centered in their home market, as in, where they're physically located, but let's say that they're able to identify, I don't know, 3 different areas, hotspots in their home state. Like they're in Georgia or Florida, and they find in that Georgia, Florida range, not too far from home, 3 or 4 really hot areas to invest in, or high levels of investor activity. Would your advice, just as an investor, as a pro, be to identify a really good market and then establish kind of market expertise, become someone who really knows that market backwards and forwards, or to give yourself a little bit more flexibility to be a light touch investor in multiple markets, and kind of spread out your activity for marketing and deal sourcing?
I think it's more important to go deeper than to go wide and thin. Um, One of the things that Privy is great at doing is when we show you this investor activity, we don't just show you that, okay, a deal was here. You can drill down in that specific market and look at each specific deal and look at the numbers. So you can see that a property was purchased at, say, 54% of the ARV. We show you the price. We show you what they bought it for, what they sold it for, the gross margin, the percentage of ARV they bought it at. We show you the before and after photos. You can see what kind of condition the home was in when they first acquired it, and then it looks like after. We also show you who the flipper was or who the landlord was, so you can start to build a buyer's list. We show you who the agents that were involved in those transactions are. So if you're looking for an investor-friendly agent who can be your boots on the ground or help you write offers, we show you who those people are as well. So what I tell people is go back and look at the last 10 to 20 sold properties that were fix and flipped in that particular market. And with that information, you start to really become a local market expert. You get to learn the local market realities, because a deal in Florida, like Miami versus Tampa versus Jacksonville, it's all different, even within the same state. So you can only imagine the difference between a property in Malibu and in Boston, Massachusetts. 2 completely different strategies on how to analyze a property, what a deal even is. Can you even fix and flip in a certain market, or does only rentals work? Or do you have to do creative financing, or like seller or financing are subject to? That varies from market to market. So it's way more important, I think, especially for beginners, to double down on one market, maybe 2, if they're if they got a little bit more bandwidth. But for the average person who's doing this as a side hustle, like, I would be super focused on one market and just learn the crap out of it.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And then for you guys, for people coming on as clients, what's the onboarding process look like? The reason I ask is that at Launch Control, if someone comes in, signs up for the software, and just starts to use it, the 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 success rate is far less than those that come in, work with our team, understand the necessary strategies for text marketing to get that your deal flow pipeline filled up. We
Mhm.
we we want text to lead immediately to discovery calls, or if not immediately, to be able to be nurtured to the point of a discovery call, so that all the real estate investor is doing is converting hot leads into conversations into deals, right?
Hmm.
So in order to get there, the shortest path between point A and point B for us is to work with our customer success team and really understand how the software works and not try to just go it alone. So a lot of the tools you have available, if someone's coming in absolutely fresh and they don't know how to analyze a deal, what's their onboarding process like with you guys?
Yeah, you're exactly right. For the people who just get in there and they don't watch any training, or they just get in there and start playing around, it's probably pretty overwhelming. Especially if this is the first time they've ever seen any sort of like software and they're like a brand new person. Like they're like, well, what does ARV mean? And what is a fix and flip? What's an absentee owner? Like the verbiage can be complicated, right? So in our onboarding process, we have basically like a checklist, a checklist of things that they should do when they first get in the software. And then part of that checklist too is in links to courses that we've built that shows them how to use the software. Some tutorials, on-demand training that they can watch on their own time, but it's all guided, right? We show them on a step-by-step basis. And then we also have the ability, well, we send them an invitation to our live training that we do twice a week. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, live Q&A. While people are going through the onboarding tutorials and the how-tos, they're going to generate some questions, right? So we encourage them to write those questions down, come to live training, ask them, or they can chat with our team live. We got a live chat. We use, I can't remember what it's called right now. We have a little chat software where you can just chat with the team and they'll answer questions live. So you're right. The onboarding is very important. And so, live training, on-demand tutorials are crucial for people to get that foundational understanding of how to use the system before they really start just taking action.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, anybody that's listening, for any software you sign up for in the real estate industry, be it Launch Control or Privy, take the time to go through the onboarding, take the time to work with the teams, because it's going to drastically impact your ROI coming from those platforms. So definitely take the time to deep dive. It will be financially worth it for you. So financially worth it for you as a unintentional segue. Let's talk about, down to the investor level, and a success story coming out of Privy, someone that you guys have worked with, and kind of how they leveraged Privy to grow the real estate business.
Yeah, we've got so many success stories. I wish we had the ability to track everyone's deals. Like if we could actually see, like there was a data source to see like how many
Same.
deals people are actually doing, that would be amazing. And it's difficult in the wholesale world too, because not everything's recorded, but like we could see every fix and flip that people do, if they're a Privy user. But connecting like their LLCs anyway. I really wish we could do that. I've had dreams about that before, but I do get a chance to talk to a lot of people. And so we've got a whole range of people who do different things. But like for example, we've got uh, an agent slash investor out of Chicago, um, who has done over 300 deals that he pulled directly from Privy.
Well,
His name's Christian Chase. If anybody's looking for like a good agent in the Chicago market, look up Christian Chase. He's an absolute pro. He knows that market inside and out, and he's doing lots of deals. Wholesalers. One of our pro users, his name is Mahmoud Isa. Mahmoud is based out of the San Francisco market, and I actually interviewed him a year or two back now. But at that point in time, he had done 600K in assignments in less than a year. All stuff that he found directly from Privy, 100% virtually, with zero marketing. He was just doing on market deals, just finding them, locking them up. Built his buyer list through Privy, did 600K in assignments. And another one of our users named John Galan. He's done over $1 million in assignments in a certain time frame, and I think his goal for, I don't think it's this year, it might be for 2026, is to do $5 million in assignments.
wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So it's a big range. One of our users, um, I can't remember her name right now, but she was based out of the Houston market. And at that point in time, she was just starting off her business. And she was looking for deals in Houston at first, but we didn't have direct to MLS data in Houston yet. And so it's a non-disclosure state. So it's really hard to do business in Texas if you don't have direct to MLS, but we had it in Dallas already. And so I'm like, well, she wanted to sign up, she wanted to get going, and she was really concerned because she wanted to go and drive around and look at all these houses that she was finding. And she's like, all right, cool, I'll just do it in Dallas then. So she started a virtual campaign, finding properties in Privy, getting them under contract. And in the first few months, she closed like 9 deals and 100% virtual. And one of the things that she told me that she learned through that process is that looking for deals in her own market was holding her back. She felt compelled to go and look at these properties. And so she was spending most of her time driving around looking at houses and not writing offers. And then when she was forced to do stuff virtually and she didn't have the obligation of looking at houses and just didn't really have the ability, she was actually able to start ramping up her business and doing deals and execute. And it happened because she had to choose another market. And so, there's all kinds of different strategies that work on market, off market, looking for motivated sellers through distressed leads versus, finding stuff on market as well with zero marketing. Most of the users that are having success with our platform have multiple different strategies that they're doing.
Yeah, I think that the combination of Privy and launch control can be a really, really powerful combination because what I see a lot of times when I work with some of the really upper tier investors, the very successful investors nationwide, a lot of all of them really have market profiles, different markets that they're working in, where they know exactly who the buyers are, exactly what the margins are, exactly what the strengths are. Whether it's like you said, is it a wholesale market, is it a subject to market? They've got all of that mapped for the core areas that they work in,
Mhm.
and so their decision making process, their ability to turn a deal over is hyper fast because they can basically glance at a potential deal and they know exactly whether that's going to work and how it's going to work because they've got everything mapped out. And
Yeah.
usually people don't get to that stage until several years into their real estate investment journey. They have to kind of build up to that, right?
Yep.
But given what Privy offers, and given the low price point for launch to reach out to people in new markets to start to generate some both interest from buyers in working with you, and also of course interest in sellers and their willingness to sell or to negotiate. So if you can go in, use Privy to set up market profiles in these new markets that you want to go into, where you're highly educated about the market before you've ever even driven through one of the neighborhoods, because you've done all of that preset research, taken the time, and then use launch control to do initial outreach, like I said, to both buyers and sellers. You can go into a new market with a very, very high level of confidence, which
Mhm.
is, if you can take the scary away, right? That's the thing that gets people, I think, in going into a new market, is the, I don't really know it. I don't know how people are going to react. And so if you can take away the what ifs, then your margin of success is going to go way up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're right about that. Remove the scary part of it. I like how you put that. Um, it can be pretty unsettling to go target a new market, but for a lot of people, they're so new that it doesn't matter if it's their market, where they live, or some other market. And people have, I guess, unrealistic expectations about what they're going to know about a market just because they live there. Like, if you live in, I've born and raised in Denver. Like, I know if there's an accident on I-25, like, I know the side streets to get around it so I can get back on and get to my place on time. But that's not going to help me do a deal.
Right.
So there's certain things that I know about where I live that help me, but it doesn't translate over to being a better real estate investor necessarily. The data is what teaches you what a deal is. The data teaches you the local market realities, and that's what we've really excelled with Privy, is showing more and more investor activity, giving you more insight into what's working for other investors, and then using that data to put together a better strategy for yourself that matches that market and what your skill set is as an entrepreneur. Right? Are you good at looking at numbers? Are you good on the phone? Are you good at, meeting people and building rapport and getting them to know, like, and trust you quickly? Like, where is your strength? And Privy can help, align what you're good at with what the data tells you, and then you can put together a better strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no such thing in real estate investment as like an El Dorado market, right? Where you're going to stumble in and everybody wants to sell off market and no other investors are there, and like that doesn't exist. But if you go in with the right data and you can find, like you said, a sweet spot for yourself, right? Where
Mhm.
you're going to be able to leverage your strengths, you're not going to be overwhelmed by competition. There is a certain friendliness to investing in the area, which, I think if if you if the sellers in an area have some awareness of non-MLS opportunities, or they know someone that's gone that route, it's a known entity in a neighborhood, it's probably going to be quite a bit easier than
Sure.
going into a, like you said, like a rural area where there are no comps and no history of that. It, it's a harder sell, right? So the research
Yeah.
makes it easier.
Yeah, and you brought up something that's really important to highlight, is that the whole idea of competition, I think, is misconstrued. Um, Without competition, you have no comps, right? And it's funny that the
I like
first
that.
four
That's good.
letters is the same. Like,
Yeah.
your competition, other investors create your comps. If you have no competition in an area, it's because there's no demand there, and you're not going to have any comparables. So I think people should see competition as a benefit, because that means you're going to have the comparables, you're going to have the demand and all the stuff that you need to be able to put together a deal. And as an investor, I can solve the problem of competition. I just have to be harder working. I just have to have better data. I have to be quicker. I have to be better at analyzing properties and being creative. You cannot solve the problem of no competition.
Yeah, and the real estate industry is, it's weird in the sense that it's hyper competitive, but also hyper supportive, right? So if you're in a competitive market, there's a good chance that you can find, if you're new or even just kind of coming up in your business, there's a good chance you can find some mentors in that area that have done really well and
Oh
are
yeah.
and are willing to talk to you about that market, willing to give you the pros and cons, willing to give you a few of the "I wish I had known" kind of pieces of advice that can be really helpful, because it's, you know like I said, a lot of competition, but a lot of support for people to really build wealth and do well in real estate because of the kind of niche nature of it.
Oh yeah. It's a really good point. I'm part of, a handful of communities, and they're really good about, collaborating and sharing and, helping each other, pulling people up, and, kind of leaving the egos at the door. Some of these communities, like, there's people who are making millions that are helping people that have never done a deal before.
Yeah.
And so in where that also works well is in the wholesale world. Like, there's multiple sides of the transaction. So there's acquisition, and those are people who are maybe good at sales and have time to do a lot of follow up and have good CRMs and, good accountability on that end. And then there's, like, the disposition side of the business. And so sometimes it's, you don't have to be the only one that's going through that whole process. Like, maybe you're good at acquiring a property, but you partner up with somebody else who's got a good buyer's list, and they can help you with the disposition. And now you've got a JV situation going on where everybody can make money. And so that's a great way of entering a new market, is figuring out, like, who's already there, who's already built the relationships with buyers in that market. And if you can go out and find a deal, then you don't have to worry about the disposition part, because you can do a JV split with somebody and allow them to dispo it to their list. And it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's often an underutilized path. It's the investor spirit, or the investor slash entrepreneur spirit, is often, I'm going to build wealth for myself, and there's like an individual kind of push to it. But there's so much learning opportunity that comes from JVing, so much experience gained And just like I said, that also takes away the scary, right? Because you've got support in a deal. And so, yeah, that is a great way for people, I think, to really get their feet wet and learn very quickly.
Yep, learn quickly and shorten that learning curve a little bit, right? By learning from others, maybe avoiding mistakes. They can give you advice on what not to do, not just what to do. And then that'll also potentially shorten your timeline from never doing a deal to your first deal closing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you did. I usually talk about this kind of at the end, but we just discussed it. You've mentioned previously, some coaches and mentors that you've worked with, and also some groups that
Mhm.
you work with that can be beneficial. Anybody that you want to mention? Because, like I said, the launch control audience really kind of runs the gamut of just getting started all the way up to hyper successful. So I think
Yeah.
at every stage along the way, people could use some references if you've got some good ones.
Oh, for sure. There's so many good ones out there, and there's so many bad ones too. And I won't mention any of the
That's why
bad
I
ones.
asked this question, is because to get the trusted advice from people like
Oh
you.
man, like I said, I've been around for 20 years, so I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I've been most impressed with two groups mainly that are associated with two individuals, and so and I've been fortunate enough to get to know them, a little bit more closely. And this is Jamil Damji and Pace Morby.
Hmm.
They work together in lots of different elements, but Jamil runs astro flipping,
Yeah.
so really good group of people that are focused on mainly wholesaling. And
Yeah.
then Pace Morby has his group Sub 2, which is it isn't just subject to or creative financing. They do everything from people who are doing wholesaling to creative financing. They also teach they've got their own like syndications going on, and it's a lifetime community. So once you're in it for life. Really good people that are in those groups. So those are two groups I would definitely highly encourage people to look at and get to know some really good people that are doing good stuff in the business. And you've heard of that term go giver, right? I think it's
Hmm.
overused. It's kind of one of those hot terms, but those two people are, I think, the epitome of that go giver mentality, just delivering way more value and really over delivering for what it costs to be in some of these groups.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, yeah. And both of those are, they're known names, really, really, really good resources. So for anybody listening, definitely worth checking out. So Benson, for in terms of like crystal ball of the industry, where things are headed, it's the real estate industry is always a little bit nervous and chaotic, but
Mhm.
also a little bit hopeful. So in terms of like what you see coming down the line, where do you see the industry headed in the next few years?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's so much volatility. We got this election cycle that's coming through right now, and people are making predictions about what are going to happen with rates as we approach, election day. But believe they'll probably come down a little bit, but not so far down to where properties are going to be where they were affordability wise a couple of years ago. But regardless of where the market goes up or down, there's going to be opportunities to make some money. I think that creative financing is going to become way more important because of rates making properties kind of unattainable for the average investor. So being able to work with a seller to get into deals where you don't have to go out and raise a bunch of money, get some seller financing, I think that's going to be a much more important strategy than just cash deals like wholesale or fix and flip. From a technology standpoint, one of the things I'm really interested in, and I'm involved in another project where this is happening, is tokenization of real estate assets. So basically, giving people the ability to have fractional ownership in a real estate asset. So
Ah,
there are companies out there who are starting to lay the foundation and the groundwork for giving the average person like you and I the ability to own tokens in a piece of real estate. And you can go in and you'll be able to tokenize any sort of asset, whether it's a retail center, a fix and flip, maybe it's a large multifamily property, and then create tokens and then sell those tokens and allow people to come in and own part of a project, whereas they don't have to be like own the full thing. That's going to become way more popular and way more simple for the average person to do because the blockchain and smart contracts and all that sort of stuff is changing how we look at assets, and it's moving into the real estate world.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's in that case, there are a lot of people that are, you know, doing wholesaling on single family homes, and they're doing okay, and they would love to get into storage facilities or retail centers, but the price point is just so high.
Yeah.
It's so much money to play with that it's not a risk that they're willing to take on. But, investing in a REIT, for instance, is just a bit too low end, too passive, not enough return on it. So something like that where you can have potentially a higher level of return, bit of a bigger stake in something, but not having to leverage your entire business to take a shot at it, I think is
Yeah.
something that will play well with the investment community.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And even like another level above, like a REIT, are these syndication type scenarios, and
Hmm.
even those are unattainable for the average person. Most of those syndication opportunities are a minimum of $50,000,
Right.
and most people don't have that liquidity to be able to just give $50,000 to a potentially risky investment.
Yeah, I mean, even wholesalers that are doing well, that's 50 grand that they can spend on a deal that they own directly, or a deal that, or putting it back into their business. So just setting aside 50 grand is a big ask, even for someone who's doing quite well.
Yeah. From a Privy perspective, we've got a really cool tool that we're building right now. That's and actually this is I think a discussion we should have with launch control too, where
Mhm.
you'll be able to basically have a widget where regardless of where you're at on the internet or what software you're in, there's going to be a button that says analyze with Privy. And you can click a
Yeah.
button and it will run comps, build a comparative market analysis for you on the fly on any property, whether it's sourced in Privy or it's sourced with launch control or some other website. And so that's something that we're working on right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's a great tool. We'll definitely have to have a bigger discussion about that one. All right, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I really appreciate all the advice you've been able to give to the audience. Amazing. Anything else? I know we talked about Privy quite a bit. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring to the audience's attention? Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I'm creating lots of really cool content. I've got a podcast called the REI Hacker Podcast. You can just do a Google search. You'll find it on YouTube. We're also on Apple and Spotify. We got some really cool, you know, I almost said contestants, but guests come through. Everybody from really successful real estate investors to mentors and coaches that are well known to service providers to the real estate industry, and we always dig in to learn their backstories and what how they were uh, became successful. Advice, industry insight. So it's really a fun project for me to do that. And then if you're interested in following me, checking me out on Instagram, it's Benson_REI. I'm also on TikTok and some other platforms too, but we create a lot of fun content and training tips and tricks. So check us out on socials.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, for everyone listening, we'll list the URL for Privy, as well as Benson's affiliate link if you guys want to sign up for Launch Control. It'll be in the description of the episode. And yeah, make sure that if you do come on board with both Privy and Launch Control, like we mentioned in the episode, work with our onboarding teams. Let them know that you're using both tools together, so that we can look for ways to optimize both tools for your business and get you guys the most ROI we possibly can working together. All right, Benson, really appreciate the time. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you.
Okay, bye.